Hey everyone, this is your weekly episode of the Zephyr Podcast. I'm Benjamin.
And I am Fabio. How are you doing, Benjamin?
Good. 1 week away from the release. Well, actually, maybe slightly less than a week. We might be releasing slightly earlier than usual. Next week, Zephyr 4.3. Pretty busy putting together the demo. Hopefully, everything will be ready in time. But it's really nice. Lots of really cool new features that are actually really nice to use in terms of like developer experience and stuff. I'm actually having a lot of fun putting that demo together and looking forward to sharing it with folks. And also pretty excited to see more and more people tuning in to the podcast every week, sharing their feedback on Discord. If you didn't realize or missed the memo, we have the hash podcasts channel on Discord, which I really encourage people to use to share questions or like thoughts or ideas about things that we should be talking about in the podcast. Subscribe also, please. Subscribe and give us like those fancy stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever is the platform you're using. It's always nice to see the feedback, to see this growing, and basically that also means reaching more people, right? And I think that's one thing we enjoy very much in this community is always reaching out to new circles, new communities. So please do that. You might be listening or quote unquote watching the podcast on the YouTube channel. That's also an option. Maybe this is not the greenest or the easiest on the planet, but we have the video like voiceover version of the podcast on the Zephyr YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, and then there's been some interesting discussion that started from the podcast in the Discord hash podcast channel. So yeah, join that one. We like to keep it interactive. It's a good thing there.
Yeah, please do that. And actually, this week is maybe a bit slow, sort of by definition. Like we are in between RC2 and RC3 of the upcoming Zephyr 4.3 release, which means that we didn't merge any new features. There's a few lining up and waiting for the merge window to open, which we will be certainly talking about. But maybe a bit like last week, we can go through some of the cool news we saw on the internets, starting maybe with languages. Like Fabio, I think you spotted something happening in the Debian community. More Rust coming to Debian.
Yeah, this is something that made a bit of noise in the Linux community, and usually these things end up affecting embedded as well. So it looks like the Debian apt maintainer said that they will soon begin requiring Rust for all the ports. So they've been fairly clear that maintainer of Debian ports, they need to be ready. Like the way they described it was Debian ports need to adapt or be sunset. So it was some very strong wording, and it seems to signal some more stronger adoption of Rust in Linux, which means that this stuff is gonna. It seems like it's here to stay. So this specifically looks like they want to use Rust for the apt parsing code. I think something related to checksum validation. Safety obviously is the big thing. So yeah, it's here to stay. And because you didn't know, we do have Rust support for Zephyr, so there's binding for using I'm not sure how much, but some of at least the most common APIs. And it's been there for a few releases. I haven't seen a ton of projects using it, but there's something going on. Also, do you have an idea of how the Rust adoption for Zephyr, Benjamin?
I don't like you said it's there. It might not be like fully like all the APIs or all the subsystems might not have bindings just yet, but I do see some people using it. Like one thing that's actually it looks like it might be happening is for those who don't know, we have an Arduino core, the so-called Arduino core implemented like on top of Zephyr. So those fancy for those familiar with it, at least, like digital read, digital write, analog read, analog write, like those like really high level, really easy to use Arduino APIs that you would find that people have learned to love and use for the past 20 years or so in their so-called sketches. We have a Zephyr implementation of that, but due to, I think, like in a nutshell, due to some licensing issues, I believe, with the way the Arduino code and those APIs are licensed, it is a challenge to sort of pull it into Zephyr. So someone, Suburi, one of our community members, I think is actually looking at re-implementing the API using Rust. So there is a pull request against the Arduino core for Zephyr that's out there, and that we will be linking in the comments. But that's interesting. Like I didn't look at it for full disclosure, but I would hope that this is actually a good way for folks to get a sense of how things feel like and look like when using Rust for embedded on one hand and for Zephyr more specifically.
Yeah, if you're doing an application for Zephyr using Rust, let us know, send some feedback, how it goes. And yeah, should we plug the tech talk about Arduino as well?
Yeah, totally. So there's a lot happening. I mean, I feel like we've been talking about Arduino one way or the other for the past few weeks, but yeah, there's a lot. Obviously, the community there is pretty huge, and yeah, they have this thing where they have or we have, depending on how you want to say it, like we have this Arduino layer on top of Zephyr for people interested in using those Arduino API I was just mentioning on top of virtually any board. And sort of the other way around, Arduino is also for the past few years or so, they are now their BSP, if you will, or like their whatever they put on their first-party boards, and all the Arduino Unos and Uno Q and whatever, like they actually use Zephyr RTOS under the hood. So there's basically the tech talk is Zephyr on Arduino, Arduino on Zephyr, it's a bit of everything. Like there's a lot of really cool technology at play. So coming up on November the 20th, and you will have the link in the show notes. You can already RSVP on YouTube, on LinkedIn, share with your friends. It's good to be back with Tech Talks. I think I said that in the past. Like the podcast is not replacing Tech Talks, and we will want to keep having those. So tune in on just a few weeks.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. The tech talk is going to be the one where the people that are there actually know what they're talking about. But maybe the podcast is more of like raise awareness in industry news. What is going on? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, podcast is that French guy and that Italian guy. And I guess the tech talk is going to be, well, that French guy and other Italian guys.
It's an
But yeah, you're right.
invitation.
They know what they're talking about. That's for sure. So it should be pretty cool.
Yeah, this should be a good one. Cool. Very looking
All
forward
right,
to it.
more language stuff.
More
I
languages.
think we wanted to raise awareness, and both of us, we were actually doing a bit of research before just hitting the record button. But there's an RFC, a proposal that's been there for quite a bit, but it looks like it's now happening, and we will be soon sort of voting on that and so on, which is basically changing our minimal required version of the C standard in Zephyr, so that we will most likely in the next few weeks or so have C17 as the minimum version for Zephyr, which means that there's a few things that we might need to clean up in the code, etc. But this is I think this is interesting because C17 is already quite old in a sense, because the way I understand it is more or less C11 with just more like maturity and but like it's been around for over a decade. Is I guess where I'm getting. But yeah, Linux is also using C11 as the minimum version. This is just embracing like the change, embracing change and getting new features that seem to be pretty cool. Like I mean, generics are supported in C11/C17, so you can have generic macros. You can have compile time assertions, which maybe in our case it's not going to make a huge difference because we already had that. I think, right, Fabio?
Yeah, I think I think that current implementation relies on what is a GCC extension, but it seems like it happens to be supported in all compilers. So yeah, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. But yeah, doing these kind of changes in Zephyr is obviously a bit problematic because beside having to support old version of the compiler that downstream users are using, we support multiple compilers, and some of those are unfortunately proprietary, and there's no right now we don't have them in CI, so catching regression is harder. But yeah, the people, the guys working on this stuff, obviously did their check, and it seems like C17 should be supported by everything we use, and we do have people in the loop for testing all those fancy compiler like IAR, the Synopsys one, can't recall the name. So yeah, something to keep an eye on, and yeah, Linux I think has been on GNU 11 for a while, and they do use generic in some part of the code, so this is something worth looking into. So yeah, this may lead to some cleaner code and new features in some place. It's gonna be a problem for people using very old compilers, and yeah, this has been discussed in the TSC, by the way, which I guess a lot of people may not be attending because it may be a bit higher level compared to the architecture working group, but yeah, that's where this came out.
Yeah, and I guess in a nutshell, one of the reason we are bringing it up here today on the podcast is that maybe you missed the memo and you didn't know this was coming. Maybe this will impact you.
Yeah.
If so, then I mean, make sure that you and we will be again sharing all the links. Put a note in the on GitHub, show up on Discord saying that hey, no C17, please. This is going to break my millions of devices, and sure we will discuss, right? But so far it seems that this is bound to happen, I guess. So yeah, cool.
Good stuff. Should we talk about projects?
Yeah, as always, a bunch of cool projects we saw. One is we have. I don't know if people are aware. They should, because usually we hope that this is the kind of stuff that people just discover automagically. But we have on GitHub we have this awesome Zephyr RTOS list. I mean, it was a thing at least a few years back to have all those awesome lists for JavaScript and Python and whatever, like a collection of informally gathered bullet points of cool stuff. And this awesome Zephyr RTOS list, which if you didn't know, it's there. You can certainly send all your cool projects there. There was one submission from someone which I actually had missed, but for something called Akira OS, which is basically a retro. Well, they call it a retro-cyberpunk gaming console and hacker toolkit powered by ESP32, WebAssembly, and Zephyr. So it's kind of like packed with cool keywords and cool technology. There's like even it's custom hardware even. So I guess it's similar to the what is it called, the Flipper OS? Is that the
The Flipper Zero one.
The orange hacker
Yeah,
kit.
the radio hacking device. Yeah, something like that.
Yes,
Concept.
I think it feels a bit like that. But yeah, it's out there. It's open source. It has WebAssembly in it, which is kind of intriguing. But
yeah, it has the design has a good vibe and a nice list of feature. I checked the code. I think there's a lot of stuff that has not landed yet. So I can see now that it has the OTA stuff done. I'm not sure that the WebAssembly thing is implemented. At least I couldn't find any reference. But yeah, it's a project worth keeping an eye on. Something interesting may come out of that.
Yeah, so that's cool. Something else is this one I found really cool. So it's called ZLRC Lib. So it is kind of a showcase, an integration of a Zephyr-based device or firmware with lrclib.net, which is an open, or I guess like as open as it can be, a backend for fetching and requesting lyrics, like song lyrics. And so that person, Muhammad, what they built is, I think, a really, really nice showcase of using Zephyr and the networking APIs and like display APIs to build a pretty minimal and yet functional GUI for displaying the lyrics of a song. And I think it's quite nice because the GitHub repo, if people check it out, it has all the instructions to to get the sample up and running, including running it in the native simulator. So obviously, this kind of project, like as any Zephyr project, eventually you want to run it on an actual device with an actual e-ink display, or I don't know what would be the target for this one. But as you do your prototyping and so on, it's really convenient to do everything on your host computer, on your Linux PC, right? And so things like testing the display with with your PC display, testing networking by having Zephyr tap into your own host PC networking stack, stuff like that. So it has all the instructions in the README to do just that, which I think is quite nice. So it's I'm almost tempted to say that this is something we could have as an official Zephyr sample in a sense, because we keep getting asked in surveys and whatnot for like, hey guys, please, we want more end-to-end samples, like Hello World or blinking an LED. It's too limited. Like, yes, it demonstrates how to use one single set of APIs, but when I do a real project, I'm going to have a mix of everything. I'm going to do GPIO plus networking plus display and so on. And so, yeah, maybe those kind of samples would be good to have.
Oh, this would be in direct competition with my CI traffic light.
Then
End-to-end
bring it
sample.
too. Bring it too. That's different use case.
Yeah, the network maintainer
Yeah.
asked me to submit it, and you know what the problem is when you finish a project. 30 seconds later, you've lost your interest and you're moving to the new one. But yeah, it's cool to have end-to-end project, because I think there was originally an agreement for the sample that they need to do a single thing, but it's somewhat nice sometimes to have something that does the whole thing, right? You want to have network provisioning, DHCP, doing HTTP request, JSON, and dump it on a display, and you want to have support for native SIM so that you can have a faster development cycle. And this was a thing for the Akira OS project that we mentioned before as well. If you look at the project, they do have a definition for a native SIM board, and it's nice to see that people recognize the value of this feature, which you would not normally have if you only develop using a vendor SDK. So yeah, good to see. This was an interesting one. The lyrics API. This is the library you didn't know you need, but now you can do your embedded portable Wi-Fi karaoke system, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into like what that means in terms of like copyright law, etc. But yeah, I don't know. But it's a really really cool showcase. Yes, I think.
So more on more industry news. The more from the Pebble folks, and yeah, this was unexpected. It looks like the Pebble guys released the schematics for the Pebble 2 Duo, which is one of the board that has been added in the last week before the release. And it's weird. Like the product is not out and the design files are out. So this is something that showed up in the Adafruit blog, and I had a look at the schematics, and yeah, some interesting thing is there. So they are Seed Studio branded, so it looks like they got the Seed Studio folks involved for doing the design, which is nice. I like their products, and The two duo is based on NRF 52840 plus the NPM 1300 for the power management, which is unlike the Pebble Time 2, which uses the SF32LB52. So this is one of those interesting cases where people are seeing the value, I guess, in Zephyr allowing portability of software. Like these guys can now have the same firmware and it's going to run on two completely different MCU from different vendor. So it was nice to see that. Some other interesting thing in the schematic is that, as usual, load of sensors, as you'd expect. They have the haptic feedback thing, the TI one, which is currently the only one supported there, but it's a pretty popular one. It's good to see. And they also have an audio codec, the A7212, which I've seen the driver has been submitted by NXP. I think it's in one of their newer board, but they are using with Nordic. So yeah, more on the audio stuff. We had lyrics, we had codecs in this one, and yeah, it looks like portability works. Once again, we should try some audio stuff on it. I want to do some audio things.
Yeah, but that's really really cool news. I completely I had missed that. Yeah, makes me want to have a look for sure. Yeah, now maybe so this will be like full disclaimer. This will likely be a shorter episode than usual, but I think people won't mind. People are busy writing documentation for the 3, etc. Anyway, they don't have time to listen to this podcast.
Yeah, you can have more time to write documentation and fix bugs.
Yes, but something else we wanted to mention. I think I briefly said it in the intro. We are like well into feature freeze, and things in a sense have slowed down, except that maybe they haven't. In that people are using the time to work on new APIs and subsystems that they might want to introduce. So there's a couple things that are being discussed these days, and we thought this would be also a good opportunity to briefly talk to what it takes to add new subsystems or new classes of drivers in Zephyr and stuff like that. So basically, we have an architecture working group where every week, or sometimes even twice a week, we discuss like when someone wants to add, and we will talk to those. But for example, someone submitted a new proposal for an actuator API. This is something that the initial implementation might be only just a couple API functions, but we kind of need to get them right? And so, because whatever is this new class of driver, it needs to be something that all vendors will feel comfortable implementing and adopting. We need to make sure that it covers all the particularities of and all the variants of hardware out there. So it's not like it's not going to be set in stone, and we can still change the API, but we'd rather have it reasonably good looking the first time around. So if you have like things that you feel are missing in Zephyr, that's basically the way it works. You do some RFC, you propose, you document what you think the API should look like. Ideally, you have some kind of proof of concept as well, like as in code, and then we discuss it as part of the architectural working group, and all like people from the community, people representing all the various vendors, etc., get to give feedback. And if there's either no feedback at all, or people think it's a good idea, then we can proceed and add the new APIs. So anything I forgot, Fabio, there on like the high level sort of process stuff?
No, that's it. But yeah, the actuator one is interesting. I think when I saw it, I was a bit confused at what was it covering.
Yeah, like what
It's surprisingly
because there's
generic.
that, like, what? Yeah, so sometimes it's like the initial discussion when people submit a new, like, because I don't know, like by now we have probably 40 plus like classes of peripherals supported. And so when people add something new, sometimes we're like, maybe we have that already covered as part of the whatever you're submitting.
Yeah.
It's effectively just it's kind of like a DAC, or it's kind of like it fits into the GPIO API already. And I feel like maybe actuator is a bit of that. Like,
Yeah, it's a bit odd, right? There's always a bit of a conversation on does this fit an existing subsystem, or should this be part of the application rather than the main code? So this is the type of conversation that you see when we talk about new subsystem, new API in the architecture working group. This one, I think it's cool to have for a specific reason. So the API per se is, there's just one right now, which is set point. And if you look at the description, it's like this covers anything that moves from a point to a point. It's like, yeah, sure, okay, whatever. And we already have the stepper one, which kind of covers it, but this is at a higher level. And the initial implementation is on top of PWM and covers servo motors, like hobby RC car kind of things, which I think was one of the early sample of Zephyr, by the way. But what I like about this one is that so Bjarki is behind this, and as it is in other subsystem he worked on, he's doing everything with fixed point math, which is a good thing, I think, because it's obviously faster, and if you do it right, faster execution and less code to do the thing. But it's also harder to get right. It's easy to miss something when you do this kind of thing. So I think that there's a lot of value in having a subsystem that handles something like that, and it does it with fixed point math, and it's maintained right. If you were to do this on your application, you would have to be careful and test everything properly. But with this one, it's been tested by other people as well, and it's going to have testing CI and all of these certain things. So it's very interesting. There's a separate conversation about this specific point, like floating point, fixed point math, where we don't really have a policy on whether we allow to use floating point in driver or subsystems. And I think we should. I think it's something that we should bring up in the future, mainly because if you use any floating point in your project, then you're gonna start having all the floating point emulation code, or the hard floating point support added to the thread that you're using is gonna take more RAM, is gonna take some flash. And the issue is that you may have your application and you're using a driver, and then the driver get modified to use floating point. All of a sudden you have a lot more flash used, and the performance may change a bit whether you have our floating point enabled or not. So there's a lot of implication in using floating point, and we should really have a solid policy on where to use it. For Linux is a bit easier because in the kernel you can't, you just don't use it. For us, I think it's something that is probably gonna be discussed in the future.
right. Good point. And then the other one is adding support in the non-volatile memory subsystem or a driver for OTP fuses. So this is where, like, I consider you to be the hardware guy on this show. Like, what are those? Like, I never can get my head around like those. What does that mean to have a programmable fuse, or like what's the use case?
Yeah, so your average microcontroller is going to have some configuration bit that control functionalities beyond the normal firmware execution. And the classic thing that this covers is the boot mode of the device, right? So for example, for on STM32, there are some special bit in a non-volatile register. So you change it, it's going to persist during boot time, and they control, for example, whether the reset pin is going to be used as a reset, or it's going to be a GPIO, or it controls whether the boot 0 pin is going to control the boot of the NCU, or it can or if it's ignored, and whether the device boots from system memory or from ROM all the time, things like that. And so we don't have a generic API for controlling those. It's kind of important. It's also something a bit scary to touch, especially on your dev board, because there's a chance that you may render the device and use override. This is something that if you set it wrong, you can break your device, because it's just going to boot in a point where you can't reprogram it anymore. There's also some talk about the terminology. Fuses OTP. OTP means one-time programmable. So on some devices, you can only change the bit once. And this is one of the things that this is used for is for the MAC address of the device if it has an Ethernet controller. Sometimes you set it and then you lock it and then you can't change it anymore. The way this is implemented is like the bits are all set to 1. You can only set them to 0. And then they usually have an additional bit that locks the whole thing so you can't change it anymore. And so the way this is implemented right now, I'm only familiar with the Nordic and the ST part. The Nordic one uses HAL library. I don't think there's any generic way of doing it, and you can see it used in some of the NR52840 code, because one of the things that is controlled by the fuses on the Nordic one, which I think is called UICR in their case, is the voltage of the internal regulator. So the chip has an internal regulator, and if it starts at the minimum, and if you set it wrong, you end up overvolting your device, which is not great. So it's something you want to mess up. And there's no specific API for that. On ST, there is some code to set them, and it's part of a Flash extension because there's a bit of an overlap with Flash, right? So yeah, honestly, there's just like Flash extended operation, and you can use that for reading and writing the register, the control, the boot mode of the device together with other thing. I think it's called opt-b or something like that. And so the proposal here is to use the recently introduced NVMe subsystem, which is currently only usable on Iskra ROM, and yeah, use it for defining the actual bits of the fuse, which makes programming this a bit easier, right? Because you can use only Zephyr code, and you're sure that you're going to touch the right thing. Even on ST right now, you have a extension of a subsystem operation to read and write the bit, but you still have to use the HAL bit definition for changing things. So we'll see what happens with this one. It's still the conversation is still well open. Yeah, hopefully it will lead to something.
Yeah, and get involved in the discussion if this is something that interests you. With that, I think that's a wrap. There's I did that in the intro. I will do it in the outro again. Please, I mean, keep an eye and subscribe to the YouTube channel and to the podcast, of course, on your listening platform. But yeah, YouTube wise, we post quite regularly the video recordings of the Zephyr meetups that are happening all around the world. And there's a few in the next coming weeks. November the 20th will be Munich, Germany. November the 27th is Karlsruhe, Germany as well. So there's, I don't know off the top of my head if those will be recorded, but you might actually want to attend them in person. So we have the list of upcoming events on the Zephyr website. We will be sharing a link. The Tech Talk, the Arduino Tech Talk on November the 20th as well. Just check it out. I think that's basically what we had for this week. Take the 10-year anniversary survey as well, if you haven't already, as a reminder. I think we mentioned it last week already, but feedback is really, your feedback is really important there. And we will be back next week. We might have even less to talk about because it's even more of a feature freeze. But maybe we can talk and celebrate what should be, what by then will be the availability of Zephyr for the 3.
Yeah, well, and since it seems like the trend these days is to release on Thursday, since the last week of freeze is a proper freeze, we record on Friday. So actually, by the time we record, we may already have the whole disaster of backlog of pull request merge. So maybe we will have a lot to talk about. Who knows?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's gonna be a wild Friday.
Yeah, lots of pull requests waiting at the gate. Thanks, Fabio, and thanks everyone for listening. We will be back in a week.
Bye.